Hello and welcome to Oakville Matters. Today I'm joined by Town Councillor Jasminder Sanju from her home in North Oakville and Town Councillor Natalia Lischina from her dining room in Northeast Oakville and Town and Regional Councillor Kathy Duddock from her dining room in South Central Oakville. Hello and thank you for joining me today. What we're doing again for you at home is we're going through the questions that we understand you to be most interested in the answers to. These are the questions that the counselors are getting the most often, and we hope by repeating our answers that will assist you. If you have questions that you want answered that we don't cover today, you can email me, mayor@oakville.ca, and we will address your questions the next time. Let's get started now. I'm going to turn to Councillor Lischina. Councillor Lischina, what is the thing that's most on your residents' minds?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to join you today. I first want to just say hello to the residents of Oakville, and before getting to that question, just wanted to say how proud I am of our residents for doing their part in keeping a safe distance, making sure that they're self-isolating and helping to curb the spread of the virus. So thank you, everyone. And you know, that saying we're all in this together is so heartwarming because I see it every day when I walk through the neighborhoods and the trails, whether it's on little rocks painted on or using the chalks on the sidewalk. So thank you very much for that. Now, one of the questions I've recently had was about street parking. Normally, we have a bylaw regarding that. And in these unprecedented times, obviously, there's essential services that we need to carry out, and the staffing is obviously not the same as it would be normally. So the street parking issue has been on some people's minds. And I just want to clarify that the enforcement department is not going around and telling residents to make sure that the street parking limit of the 3 hours. But what is important also to note is that you should not park anywhere near a fire hydrant. So I believe that's 3 meters. You shouldn't park within 10 meters of an intersection. That's really important. We want to make sure there's 100% visibility for people driving. You shouldn't park 15 meters within a bus stop, again, for safety purposes. And of course, really, really important that you should not block fire routes.
Those are all very good pointers. I hope everybody wrote those down and follows them carefully. And you know, your point of pride remark is very appropriate. The information that I have says that community exposure or community spread of the virus is about 27% in Oakville, and that's the lowest. It's like 13% lower than community spread is in the rest of Halton. And what that says to me is that our Oakville community is doing a better job of reducing the spread and staying home and only going out when it's absolutely necessary, as seldom as possible, to paraphrase the guidance from public health. Councillor Duddock, what's most on the minds of your residents?
I think by and large ours tends to be as they relate to our parks. We have different types of parks. We have neighborhood parks, community parks, and of course in Ward 2 we have our newly opened Tannery Park Trail along the waterfront. And people have been quite anxious to get out, especially as the nicer weather starts coming to us eventually. And they just want clarification. They're allowed to walk on trails as long as they're not loitering, but we still, abiding by our provincial regulations and guidelines, are not permitted to be in our parks. Hence why you see the caution tape around the playground equipment, and in some cases have had to barricade a parking lot. Because quite often people think, well, as long as I can park there, why can't I walk there? So that's been one of the harder ones for me. And of course, having listened to other municipalities as we're starting to work towards, what shall I say, going back to life somewhat normal, we're looking at whether or not our park benches will be available for people to sit on momentarily to catch their breath, i.e. as a senior.
Yes. Well, a careful reading of the provincial regulation says that the amenities are off limits, and certainly the benches are also amenities. I will supplement what you're saying with the observation that there's some confusion in town, I would say, as to who outranks who. I haven't got a lot of these, but I have been getting maybe 2 or 3 emails a week from people believing that I as mayor can overrule Doug
Right.
Ford as premier. And I always write back and I say, you flatter me, but I have no such power. And besides, my strength is obedience and my weakness is optimism. There's good news on Tannery Park. We had closed it, and the parking lots for the parks will remain closed because that's pretty clear in the Premier's order. But Tannery Park Trail will be open for pass-through starting today, as will any of our other waterfront trails that might have been temporarily closed. I know we had one in old Oakville that was closed because of storm damage about a week ago when the waves were really high, and it was actually dangerous to be out there. So it was closed to protect people from being swept away as opposed to a different reason. Councillor Sanju, in the new neighborhoods of North Oakville, what is most on your residents' minds for the pandemic?
So I'm going to second both of my colleagues' points for the concerns that they're seeing in their wards. And I also want to piggyback off of what both the councillors have also said. Kudos to everybody here in Oakville. I think all of us have friends and family outside of Oakville or even in different wards and in different homes, and seeing the difference in the dichotomy between how Oakville residents are managing this versus other locations. I'm so proud of everyone here, and hats off to everyone for really kind of taking this seriously and as seriously as it needs to be taken. But I would say that the majority of the issues that we've been seeing here in North Oakville really are focused around the parks. Because it's such a new neighborhood, there are so many new and young families here, and it's very difficult for children to walk by the parks and see the tapes up and say, you know what, can I just quickly get on the swings? And have those conversations with parents and saying, you know what, it's really not a good situation right now. It's really not a safe place for our children. We want to consider our provincial legislation, and we want to consider our current bylaws right now to make sure that we're keeping everyone in a very safe and healthy situation. I would say the other concern and the other ask, I would say, coming in from a lot of the folks here, we have a number of small businesses littered throughout the ward, and a lot of folks are asking about what the supports and the helps can be from the town. I know that you have developed the economic task force, Mayor Burton, here in the town. And a couple of the other things that I've seen recently is the launch of distantly.ca. That's also an excellent resource for people to be able to reach out and see how they can support their local businesses and local restaurants. I personally have gone out and bought gift cards prior to everything being on a more stricter lockdown in supporting our local business that way. Uber Eats is another great way to support our local businesses. I'm sure there's some other ways that I'm missing right now, Mayor Burton, but I know that Invest Oakville has also put up a digital Main Street. We want to make sure that we're getting as much support as we possibly can right now.
Yes, that one last item, Digital Main Street. What that is a program where we give so if any business in this situation that wants this help can email me or you. I'm at mayor@oakville.ca, and you are Jasvinder Sanju at oakville.ca, and ask to be put in touch with the Invest Oakville task force. And my task force will link any business that wants it with this free resource called Digital Main Street, where they actually help them get their business up on the web and get some sales going, and utilize. Here's a little feature that not everybody's aware of in the provincial regulations. All businesses are allowed to conduct e-commerce, and whether you're an essential business or not, you can do when you read the regulation carefully, you can do curbside pickup. And anybody who has confusion or doubt about that, I welcome you to email me at mayor@oakville.ca, and I will send you the actual Ontario regulation that gives you that clear guidance, that clear permission that you might not find on the general information page that ontario.ca features, which summarizes the regulation. So people often say, it's good to have general guidance on a regulation, but there's no substitute for actually reading the puppy. And so we can give you that additional help. And
just to add, Mr. Mayor, what's really great is that we actually have our youth involved here in Oakville. So we have an organization called Tech Under 20. And these are youth who are very tech savvy, who've volunteered to help support the businesses through the Digital Main Street initiative. So it's really great to see that as well.
That's a good note. And, it's wonderful the way our community is stepping up to help each other. And I'm just blown away by how we've reduced community exposure less than other people have. I think that's really important.
And if I could give one last shout out to our youth, the first robotics team, that's the Oakville Orbit Robotics team, they're actually creating face shields and small devices for surgical masks. So talk about the ingenuity and creativity.
Yeah, I'm pleased to tell everybody that we are now officially oversupplied with face shields. And I'm not complaining. It's better to have too much than too little.
Absolutely.
The Ford Motor Company, which is headquartered here in Oakville, has dedicated an entire plant to turning out plastic face shields. And they started with 5,000 a week. They ramped up to 20,000, and their target is 50,000 a week. And they're donating them to Ontario. So that's another example of how the community is pulling together, including arguably our biggest employer. So let's turn to Councillor Duddick. Councillor Duddick, what else are you hearing from your residents where we can provide useful information?
I think the thing I hear, being a grandmother of 8, is checking in with my family in regards to the kids. They're saying fellow parents are very, very frustrated, shall we say, in becoming the source of education within the house. And they now have a better appreciation of what our teachers go through on a daily basis. And it's not everybody adapts to e-learning. And the minute you have somebody who's got special needs, that only compounds the issue in terms of trying to get the proper education for that particular person. But I've encouraged people to consult the Halton Board of Education or the separate school board website, because as early as yesterday, they were updating their website in terms of possible tentative dates that they may be looking at in terms of if they return to school this year or how they will supplement the learning year, whether it's PA days or things of that nature. So that's one I've heard a lot about, and seeing very, very, what shall I say, inventive ways to teach their children and reward them for good behavior.
Absolutely.
The three of you cover the waterfront on this question, because Kathy, you've got the world. I mean, you win the contest among us for grandchildren, and then Natalia, you have the teenage market sewed up, and Jazz, you've got the younger kids.
I sure do.
Now, the Board of Education and the ministry have been promising where it's appropriate or you need it, one-on-one consultation between your teacher and you on behalf of your child. Are you, either of you, seeing that? Jazz, why don't you go first? What is your oldest in any form of school yet?
She is. So I have a grade 2 student at home, and grade 2 is more than kindergarten, but less than high school. And with that, it's challenging in the sense that I find that she requires a little bit more one-on-one attention when it comes to providing help and providing even the resources that the teachers and the school board are providing, because grade 2 students aren't in front of TVs and computers all day. So to now put them in front of those screens and say, this is how you're going to be doing your work, is a very different learning situation completely. It's difficult for her to even sit in front of the screen and do that work. Her eyes start to hurt. So we do it in chunks. It's supposed to only be 5 hours of learning a week. We try to split that up different times of the day. I mean, maybe later on this week when it starts to rain, we'll have a little bit more indoor time. Yesterday, we spent a lot of time outside in the backyard and on the street, because we want to enjoy that sun as much as we can. But there have been different kind of inventive programs that the school has even put together for us. The teacher suggested baking with your kids, and I can get all 3 of my kids involved with that, not just my grade 2 student. And that teaches fractions.
So it sounds like the one-on-one is actually happening to a degree.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that I think like with any other type of schooling, and this is my own personal view, the way that we view schooling in our home, it's what you put into it. So we have always been a very hands-on set of parents, and we continue to be very hands-on. We reach out to the teacher if she is not able to get back to us on something very, very quickly. We do hear from her every day anyways. But we will reach out specifically and say, you know what, our daughter's having trouble with this. Can we find a different way to do this? And she's able to get back to us. We have not had that challenge. Not to say that that's not being had with other students and other children.
It is wonderful to hear that it's actually working as they said it would. Natalia, how is it working for you? And aren't your kids both in high school?
So one is in high school, one's in post-secondary. I have to admit, they're way more tech savvy than I am. So every time I ask, have you done your homework? That's really my role in all of this, because they're both well aware of the program, how to use the programs, how to be in touch. I mean, I do get emails from their teachers, both my husband and I, to let us know what the program for the rest of the week is, or what assignments they were due. And so it's actually been really great. The whole screen time thing has been a little bit of an issue, because when the homework's done, the games begin. And I'm sure some of you guys, so, oh my gosh, and that's how the teens are communicating with each other, playing the video games. But one thing I'm really pleased to see is that both of my kids actually do take time to get outside. They both, one of them sort of makes her priority to do the 10,000 steps as much as possible through the week each day, and really to get that exercise. And I thought I'd have to be a little bit more strict with my son on that, but he's really good too, to just get out and walk and get that fresh air and get away from the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And away from the house.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of that too.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, it wasn't a pandemic era, but I do remember as a child, my mother, who I'm the oldest of 5 kids, after breakfast, she would say, okay, get out of the house and don't come back till lunch. After lunch, she would say, get out of the house and don't come back until I call you for dinner. And after dinner, she'd say, don't come back till dark.
Yeah. But, one thing initially was actually very difficult to try to explain to your, social teens that they can't be hanging out together. So it's gotten a lot easier over the last number of weeks, and obviously there's still quite a bit of time that we need to be social and physical distancing, but that's one thing that they really understand quite well now, of the importance of really keeping that spread down.
I'm happy to hear that, Natalia. I feel like there's a challenge with people with younger children as well. We have a toddler at home, and she goes to daycare, and she doesn't understand where her friends have gone. So the school or the daycare is doing a really good job. They're going to have a Zoom call with their friends tomorrow.
Oh,
wow.
Cute.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if your kids were able to use Skype and Zoom and all these things to make up a little bit of that gap.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm so excited that the school is willing to do that tomorrow. And I know that with our grade 2 student, she's got, Apple IDs for her friends, so she's able to FaceTime on occasion. So that changes things for them a lot.
Okay. Natalia, it's your turn. What else is on the minds of your residents?
So the last point I wanted to make is about the annual spring cleanup. You know, unfortunately, obviously social distancing, physical distancing, Oakville's normally has a great input from residents with respect to Earth Day and Earth Week with cleanup. We still encourage residents to do that, but make sure that they are social distancing, that they're using protective equipment like gloves to make sure that they're safe. But just to let people know that our spring litter pickup is underway. The town is addressing this through first the main roads like Dundas and Trafalgar, and then going more to the collector roads. And you know, we are responding to debris related inquiries. So if any of the residents are finding an area that especially unfortunately still has some gloves or masks laying around, and I know that council's been very proactive in trying to make sure that the bylaw was enhanced. I still see it out there myself. Just last night I took a walk right around the whole neighborhood, and I did see some gloves and masks on the ground. So it is important to make sure that people are safe if they are picking up the litter, and they can certainly give the town a call if they're seeing some of the safety environmental issues out there.
Yeah, we've had a few volunteers go out and on their own. One gentleman collected with his friends 40 bags of
Oh my
garbage
goodness.
Wow.
Thank you.
from the trails near his home. And he wanted to know if it would, you know, if that could be picked up, and because that's a little bit over the bag limit. And I arranged for a truck to come and get it and take it to the dump for him.
He's a hero in our books.
Yes, and another individual, I found out about him because he didn't ask for help to get it to the dump. He took it to the dump, and we found out afterwards. But we really appreciate that kind of community mindedness. I want to take a second to say that I hope people will start to understand that we are restoring services virtually. We've shifted people around so that they have useful work to do, and we have many as possible working from home. We are accepting applications digitally, or whatever the right word is for this pilot online mode that we're shifting to. And the few little gaps in service that you're going to see, like I mean, let's talk about the buses, for example. We cut down the number of buses to reflect the fact that so few people were using them. And then we restored a number of routes because we discovered that hospital workers and other essential workers needed them. So, but we're not collecting any revenue because in order to keep the driver safe, he's roped off and the Presto device is up by the driver, and we board by the rear now. So we have a new normal, but to the occasional, I do get an occasional email from people saying, well, you cut all the services and so you should cut all the taxes. And I have to explain, well, actually, no, that's not how it works. And we are dedicated to continuing to provide services. And we'll be beefing that up as we go. Kathy, what else is animating people that you talk to in Ward 2?
Well, speaking from a personal vantage point, my mother's in long-term care. And it's been very frustrating as a loved one that I can't be there for her during this. Unfortunately, she has Alzheimer's. And I know numerous other people within the area have the same sort of problems. And once there's an outbreak in a facility, that complicates matters even more. But I have called the long-term care constantly to check in on her, and also to commend the staff because they're under a lot of pressure. And I can imagine a lot of people are frustrated and taking it out on people. So as I say, that's a component we deal with.
Well, and Councillor Duddick, you and I are councillors at the Region of Halton, and the Region of Halton operates 3 long-term care homes.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had the misfortune of outbreaks in a couple of them.
Yeah.
So we're very concerned about getting that right.
Mayor Burton, you had mentioned something about the calls that you're getting, and I just wanted to commend you for your leadership throughout this, and my colleagues. We get a mixed bag of calls. We get some that are saying thank you for what you're doing, but then we also get our share of frustration. And I just wanted to say thank you for being the calm in the storm for many occasions when I see emails, and the way you have responded with sensitivity and been very objective in your responses. So I commend you for that.
Thank you. I give a shout out to my 96-year-old dad, who was a military officer, and he taught me and my brothers and my sisters that in any emergency, somebody's got to be the last one to panic, and it's good to keep your head. So every time I get an agitated email from someone, I put myself in their shoes, and I think, yeah, this has got to be hard for them. Now, what would my dad tell me to say? And then it becomes clear. I just want to give a little bit of news, and of course, as a former news person, this is breaking all the rules because we put the news at the end of the show instead of at the top. But by the end of the week, we will have our community gardens open. And I hope that everybody who depends on those will be happy about that. We have 4 across Oakville. And I'm hoping that that'll give people an opportunity to safely do something about growing their own food.
That's great.
We have about a minute left. Is there anything that, Jazz, that you want to add or subtract from what we've said here?
Sure. I'll add to it. Actually, Mayor Burton, I was hoping that you could give us a little bit more information on when things are going to start opening up, given the Premier's guidance yesterday. Wanted to see if we had any plans in place or what our thoughts were from a town perspective, because we get those questions a lot.
Well, I've got 20 seconds to do this. What I've noticed is that the Premier does signaling before he makes an announcement. And what I'm reading is that we will probably be able to start doing like step 1, 2, and 3, and maybe there'll be baby steps in sometime in May. And I hope that's not too definite for you, but that's sort of where I'm aiming. And next week, on the next episode of Oakville Matters, I should have a lot more to bring to the table on that front. So thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time on Oakville Matters.